our K-5 ELA adoption. I want to welcome a few people who are on this call today. Just in order of how I see them on my screen, I have Miss Tracy Bergman, who is our Executive Director of Literacy, Deborah Cook, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Daniela Simic, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. We have Rob Crete, our President of CTA, and Stephanie Baxter, the Executive Director of CTA. And we want to thank Rob and Stephanie for allowing us to kind of barge in on your Zoom, giving us the capacity to reach so many people today. So we appreciate that. Okay, Daniela, you ready to put up the screen? Are we up?
Screen's up.
Screen's up. Okay, let me make sure I got that there. Here we go. All right, so go ahead and you can click to the next one. So why are we here today? So as you may know, the governor recently charged the Department of Education and Commissioner Corcoran to revise the Florida standards. And as a result of the 8-month work that was done by that committee and the listening tours that were taking place around the state, we ended up with the best standards. And so we will be implementing these new standards beginning next year in K, 1st and 2nd grade. And then in 3rd grade, 3rd through 12th grade, we will begin implementing in the following year. So what does that mean for the adoption? As you know, this year was a gap year for ELA. We did not adopt as we intended to last year because we knew the best standards were coming. So now we are entering this year our adoption for ELA to find the best instructional materials that are the most comprehensive, rigorous, and equitable for our students here in Hillsborough. Now, a big part of an adoption process, obviously, is the voice of teachers and the instructional staff. And so that's why we're here today, is to kick off this initial discussion, to make sure that we have input from our instructional staff about what you want to see in a curriculum in Hillsborough County that meets the needs of all of our students. So the state's timeline is pretty straightforward right here. As you can see, over the next 3 years, we will have a pretty aggressive timeline to move to the best standards. So this year, we will begin our professional development for the best standards with our teachers beginning the 2nd semester on the new standards. And then we will continue to implement our current standards for this year. As we know, we've been doing that for the first half of the year. And then also in the beginning of next semester, we'll begin our adoption process for K-12 ELA. And the good thing is that we'll be able to align our adoption process to the new standards since they have been released and we do understand what they are. And it is my understanding that the test item specifications for the new assessment will be available along the way as well. We are currently implementing our ELA and math curriculum for this year and our statewide assessments. As of today, we do know that we are administering the FSA assessment at the end of this year. When we move into next school year, we will begin to actually implement and teach the new best standards for K2 ELA only. The remaining contents in ELA 3 through 12 and all of math will stay on the current Florida standards. But next year, we'll begin the adoption process for math, because when we get to the year 22-23, we will be implementing all of the new best standards for all ELA and all of math, and we will have new assessments in 22-23 for both reading and math. So just some key implications I wanted to kind of cover over the best standards is that they are organized into 4 strands: our foundational skills, reading, communication, and vocabulary. Each standard is a part of a vertical spiral progression that allows for scaffolding across grade levels. I think that was one of the great things about the new standards, is how they are built and they do follow a progression so that scaffolding can happen across grade levels. There is a major emphasis on systematic phonics instructions. And what's good about that for us is that we jumped on that real early this year with the introduction of SIPs to make sure that we've established that systematic phonics instruction at K2. There's also a big major focus on knowledge acquisition. We know that as students build their background knowledge in reading that helps them comprehend more. While we know that reading skills do service students in comprehension, that we have to move away from focusing on all just about teaching reading skills and really focus on building that content knowledge to allow students to make those connections and comprehend deeply. And arts, history, and science and literature really are a major focus and integrated into the ELA core content areas. So in 2019, the district did participate in a literacy review. And in that review, or audit, if you say, teachers were surveyed. And I'm going to give everyone just a moment to take a look at the results of what the teachers' perception was around the existing literacy curriculum. And just, I'll highlight a few things, but I'll give you about 30 seconds to kind of read over that and see some of the things, how you responded. So as you can see, the teachers felt who responded to this survey that the district curriculum really needed to be more robust in providing the guidance and support to meet various students, our populations. You know that we have varying needs and a very diverse community of students within Hillsborough County Schools. And when you look at some of the results here, you can see that the existing curriculum really doesn't meet our needs in supporting all of our populations, whether they be our vulnerable populations or our advanced populations. So it's real critical as we move forward that we take what we've learned with our existing curriculum and figure out what we need to do differently in order to best support our students moving forward under the new standards. So that's just wanted to spend some time to share with you how teachers felt about the existing curriculum. All right, and as we move through today, I know many of you are already populating some questions. If you could just jot your questions down maybe on paper for a minute, and then once we get to the end of the presentation, we may have answered your question, but if not, we will make sure that we will go through the chat and answer as many questions as we have time for today. And any questions that we do not get to today, we'll be sure to capture in the chat and follow up and get those respondents with the committee that will be meeting on instructional material adoption. So at this time, I'm handing it over to Tracy Bergman.
Thank you, Sarah. So what does this mean for our instructional materials? One of our goals here in Hillsborough County is to make sure that we find the highest quality instructional materials that are out there and available. And with that being said, we want to make sure that there are some key look-fors that are similar to what Mr. Connor talked about. First of all, we need to make sure that the materials that we look at and that we review are aligned to the standards. In other words, they can't just be the same materials we've always used with the best standards put on top of them. Rather, we're looking for materials that truly align to the foundation portion of the standards, which is the reading of science. The reading of science focuses on looking at phonics, working memory, and auditory processing, and looking at how those things match up with language acquisition and background knowledge to help the student become a fluent reader, as well as a reader that understands and can gain knowledge from that content. So whatever material that we look at, we really want to make sure that it has that foundational piece in its build to make sure that the students get what they need to meet the rigor of the standards. The other piece that we're looking at are the supports for all learners. When we think about supports for all learners, we think about ELL students, ESE students, advanced students, and struggling students alike. We need to make sure that because, as Mr. Connor mentioned, the standards do spiral and progress on each other, both vertically and horizontally, that there are scaffolds provided within that curriculum to help us meet the needs of all of our learners. We also want to make sure that we're building knowledge through authentic texts. Authentic texts that, A, are real books that students get to hold and read, and also are reflective and responsive in that they match what our students look like, what our students experience, and the needs of our students in terms of social emotional learning. Finally, we're looking at evidence-based questions, tasks, and assignments. Similar to what's in the Florida standards, we do want to make sure that our content has texts that are rigorous enough, that are meaty enough, and that are well developed enough to make sure that our students leave elementary school with that foundational knowledge base to be successful later on in life. So what is on the state's short bid list? There are 6 vendors that are on the short bid list. The first vendor is Amplify CKLA, the Florida edition. The second is Wit and Wisdom by Great Minds. The third is HMH, Florida Into Reading. The fourth, Florida Wonders by McGraw-Hill. The fifth is Florida My View Literacy by Savvis Learning. And the last is Florida Benchmark Advanced. If you notice, some of these vendors were actually part of the adoption period back in 2012, and the others are currently vendors that came out with materials shortly thereafter. So they are all programs currently in existence. So we're going to take a deeper look into 3 specific materials. Amplify Core Knowledge, we're going to look at McGraw-Hill Florida Wonders, and we're going to look at Wit and Wisdom. So I think I need to share. Can you see my screen? Hopefully. The first one we're going to take a look at is Amplify CKLA. Amplify CKLA, when you take a look at the daily instruction, consists of different components. The first component is a skills component, which is a phonics-based program that consists of a teacher guide, a student workbook, an at-home reader, as well as an assessment and remediation guide and fluency packet. These skills are designed to provide students the opportunity to participate in decoding and word study skills daily. One of the next key components of Amplify CKLA is the knowledge base. Amplify, and I know there's the is not concept. Components of Amplify CKLA. So they consist of reading comprehension with heavy content. Some of the content is aligned to social studies standards, some is not. There's some trade book text. There's 1 trade book per core knowledge unit. So you get a total of 12 trade books within this company. They consist of a partnership with the ReadWorks articles, as well as project and available to use within the knowledge base. In addition, they include some background pieces that include the timeline cards, the individual code cards, as well as some flip books and vowel flip books as well. So that's pretty much what you get overall. The other piece that they have is poetry, which includes daily lessons. One of the key components of the BEST standards is genre study. And so they do have poetry that fits in with the various knowledge bases that can be used as well to support. They also include an integrated writing, which includes a program guide that contains prompts and aligns to the 3 pieces of writing, which includes narrative, explanatory, and opinion writing, and includes introducing and developing, so 2 units per type. So that's pretty much an overview. They also have a digital portion that includes ebooks and a hub that you can access for more information. The second one we're going to look at is Wonders. We're going to go to the teacher's edition of Wonders. Wonders is a McGraw-Hill, And Wonders, when you take a look at Wonders, it is your typical basal program. So if you're familiar with using a basal, Wonders is probably what you're used to seeing. McGraw-Hill has been a company that's been around for a while and has participated in many adoptions over time. So when you take a look at Wonders, the Florida edition, what you're going to find is either 5-day or 10-day lesson development by genre, which is going to include anchor text with essential questions. So you're going to see here the baby bears, its expository text, and the essential knowledge question: how are offspring like their parents? There are key components when you look in here of the phonics program, including high frequency words, phonics building, and short vowel sounds. There are also various guided passages that you can find, for example, eagles and eaglets, and the ELA scaffolding passages, as well as the differentiated passage to support small group work. You do have the ability to share the text on your smartboard, or if you're doing e-learning on the computer screen. And the genres of text consist of science, fiction, and social studies content, not necessarily totally aligned to the Florida content, but loosely aligned to some of the state content standards. You do have a reading writing companion when you look over here, and it will provide some topics and some instructional pieces for both grammar, spelling, as well as your writing workshop. And again, here is the differentiated piece, so you can find the levels that match up for approaching on, beyond, and English language learners. There is a separate online platform. So when you have Wonders and you look at the online platform, it's not Canvas, it is its own platform where the data and the assignments and the assessments can be found. So that's important to note as well. The last one we're going to look at is Great Minds, Wit and Wisdom. And I'm going to pull up the second grade Wit and Wisdom. Now, Wit and Wisdom does come with a foundationals program that is separate from the actual original program that was published and that is out there. It is the Foundations program that comes complete with its own scope and sequence, as well as its own decodable readers that are called geodes. That students are able to read to practice the foundational skills. When you take a look at Wit and Wisdom, it's divided into 4 content modules. For second grade, and we're going to look at the second one for just a minute. Second grade, the 4 topics are Season of Change, American West, Civil Rights, and Good Eating. Within Wit and Wisdom, not only is there foundations, but there are approximately 36 lessons in each module. So this module has approximately 36 lessons, and each lesson, like the module itself, is divided into focus lessons. The lessons are approximately 90 minutes long a piece. That does not account for the foundations lessons that go with it. So altogether, it's about 120 minutes when you take a look at it. There isn't a module overview, as well as an essential question. Picture books and ancillary materials do come with this program. There's also an online access for additional resources, including various poems that support the overall piece. Each unit consists not just of lessons, but also a knowledge goal to let you know what exactly specific content students should be looking at as well. So there is your text, your content, your craft, and your daily learning objectives that it provides. The teacher's guide itself does have, when you take a look, various scaffolds and things to help guide the instruction, teacher's notes, and things like that. However, when you take a look at it, there is no specific intervention program that comes with Great Minds beyond the phonics program. So that's something important. Most of the instruction is either whole group, or then it uses the gradual release to kind of send them, the students, off they go. Okay. Let me fast forward here. So what do you get from a publisher? You get a teacher's guide, you get a student guide, and with that you may get some ancillary resources as we talked about. You may get practice workbooks, you may get some additional guides in terms of the phonics instruction or anything else. I need to stop sharing and share again. Is that what you're telling me? Yes. Hopefully that worked. You get the teacher's guide, the digital access on a separate platform. And again, not every program comes with that. All right, I'm gonna let somebody else share because my screen's giving me trouble. There you go. Can you go ahead and hit it? There you go. You also get intervention materials in some of the key components. Again, not every program comes with intervention. The Wonders program that we took a look at does indeed have it. Some of them do have remediation packets. When you look at Amplify CKLA, Wit and Wisdom does not contain intervention materials. In terms of professional development, publishers generally, as part of the package, provide initial professional development. They train all the teachers in the use of their program. They look at the components. You get like an unboxing type video, whether it be virtual or face-to-face, depending on the situation. They may also take you to an online platform where you can find additional resources. And finally, the last thing that you get is a publisher created scope and sequence. But some things to consider. Will it meet the needs of all of our learners? Keeping in mind that our ELL and our ESE students have specific language needs that need to be met. In some instances, it might. In other instances, there may be a need for teachers to dig deeper and create their own lessons to meet those specific language proficiency needs or the specific auditory processing needs of our ESE and ELL learners. We may also need additional supports to provide for the ELL push-in and the ESE push-in and pull-out teachers. For advanced learners, again, thinking about how can we encourage research skills and further questioning within the content. Teachers may need to consider that. Again, it's not part of all the packages. And the biggest question we get is, what do we do in small groups? Thinking about our current frameworks. And again, sometimes the package may have it. Other times we may have to get creative. But what if there are parts of the package that are not useful? Again, when you order from a publisher, you truly are ordering a package. So sometimes you end up with things that sit on the shelf and collect dust. Other times there are things that we have to kind of try to figure out how we're going to use it, or is it really useful? And then how are we fiscally responsible in terms of our purchase? What if the texts are not relevant to my students? These programs are designed for the general masses, not just for the students of Hillsborough County. Therefore, the texts are already pre-selected and already pre-done in order and already pre-published and ready to go. There isn't a lot of choice and input in terms of what we want and what we need. So if the texts are not relevant, again, teachers are going to need to bring in additional text to help make those units more meaningful to students. Will we have access to ongoing PD? Depends on the publisher, depends on what they're able to provide, and it also depends on the platform that's used. Will the digital tools integrate seamlessly into Canvas? That's hard to say. In some instances, no. They use their own platform and students will have to leave the Canvas platform and get onto the online platform from the publisher. So they are not Canvas integrated. They won't be able to click around, and teachers will still need to put their lessons into Canvas to support the e-learners or to support learners that are working in small groups on their own. And last but not least, how will our current effective resources be incorporated? This is where, again, it's hard to say. The publishers of these companies don't know the resources that we have. They don't know about SIPs. They don't know about Achieve 3000. They don't know about our frameworks. They don't know about School City or Canvas. So it's going to be up to us to determine how to implement these things as opposed to the program itself being fit and tailor-made to support our needs.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniela Simic, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about what would customization give us based on everything Tracy said. So what does that look like? So through customization, we would be able to address the needs of our learners, not just any learners. We would have constant collaboration from the start with ongoing feedback throughout. Our professional development would be geared towards our teachers and our needs and wants. And we wouldn't necessarily have to start from scratch and could integrate current resources and structures that we know are working. And we would develop a true partnership where both parties are contributing to the end goal. So let's look at each of these a bit more closely. Addresses needs of our learners. So this is unique to customization because curriculum isn't typically created for a specific subset of students. I'm sure we can all appreciate the importance of having culturally responsive and reflective curriculum. This is what some of you may call mirrors and windows, allowing students to build upon their own identities while learning about others. So customization allows us to incorporate mirrors specific to HCPS students, such as the work we are doing with our African American History Task Force, Hispanic Heritage, and even some local authors and artists. SEL integration. So social and emotional learning has been a part of HCPS for quite some time, but it has been seen as a separate part. Customization would allow for SEL to be integrated into our curriculum, and skills such as empathy, conflict resolution, appreciating diversity, that just becomes a part of what our students learn. ELL integration. We have a growing population of ELLs in our district and a great need to have ESOL strategies be a part of our regular instruction. So customization would give us the opportunity to include scaffolds aligned to student proficiency levels and based on the can-do descriptors from WIDA. So we have addressing the needs of our ESE and gifted learners is something that, as Mr. Connor shared from the literacy survey from 1819, that was pointed out as an area of concern. So customization would provide us with focused lessons aligned to specific student needs for small group instruction and or for our VE and gifted teachers. And then all of this, of course, needs to occur through the use of authentic text. Developing knowledge, not just reading skills, and developing that by encouraging that rich discussion and student engagement in a text. So our next highlighted bonus to customization is collaboration with consistent input. And just like curriculum would be created for our students, it is also not only created for our teachers, but also with our teachers. So teachers would be a part of the creation and review throughout the entire process, including selecting texts, development of curriculum and unit maps, and of course, the regular opportunities to review the work along the way. Data-driven development. So with a customized process, our partner would be more familiar with us as a district and therefore be able to leverage our strengths and target specific areas that need improvement. And finally, with customization, the rubrics we would use to assure the quality of our work would be established from the start with the guidance of our teachers. So our teachers are not just using a predetermined rubric to review a completed piece of work, but they are involved in the actual creation of the rubric that is used to evaluate the work that they or that you are a part of developing. Okay, so what does professional development look like in a world of customized curriculum? Well, not only is the curriculum customized, but so is the PD. This means that we could have our PD focused on the science of reading. So we're not just teaching a curriculum, but developing lifelong skills of our reading teachers. Customized process also allows us to take a problem-solving approach to PD and gives us the opportunity to provide that feedback and shift the focus of the PD if we see that that needs to happen. We would also be receiving this professional development in various formats. So one would be ongoing support throughout the year through coaching. And then the other would be through regular learning institutes. Prior to the launch of each quarter's curriculum, teachers would be trained and fully prepared for the instruction through those institutes. So, since customization means that PD is created with us and our teachers in mind, another potential benefit could be the ability to even award teachers credit for certain components of their required reading endorsement. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, and as a couple of you had already asked some questions in the chat, customized curriculum wouldn't necessarily mean that we have to start from scratch. We could integrate current resources and structures that are already working. So for example, the guides and resources in the curriculum could be created using our established frameworks that we've all been trained on to include both the whole group and the small group and integrate social studies and writing. The teacher guides and all supporting materials would be written directly into Canvas. Assessments would be built directly into School City. SIPs could be leveraged to meet the differentiated needs of students in small groups. Achieve articles could be integrated into small group instruction, and iReady could remain as a part of the computer station. So a true partnership, what does this mean? What are we looking for in a true partner during a customization of our curriculum? So we want someone who is already familiar with our work, our district, our teachers and students. We of course want expertise, someone who is considered an expert in the development of standards aligned curriculum, proven leadership. We want someone who has proven to be successful with the implementation of curriculum in large districts such as ours. And of course, we want a partner who has a history of collaborating with districts to meet their needs and create an effective customized curriculum.
All right, thank you, Daniela. What we'd like to talk to you first, I just want to thank everyone for being here this afternoon after school. It really means a lot that you're here, and we have your questions and input into this very important meeting, and also to provide that feedback for us. So I want to talk a little bit about what that customized curriculum that is going to look like or could look like based on the information that Tracy has shared and the information that Daniela just talked about. And that is our work with PCG, which is a public consulting group. They would create teacher facilitation guides for the entire literacy block, as shown on your screen right there. Some of the work that PCG has completed is customizing literacy for the state of New York, for the state of Mississippi, and they just finished with Chicago Public Schools, which is the third largest district in the nation. Those are some of the districts and states they've worked for and worked with to customize really curriculum to meet the needs of students within those areas. In addition, they have worked in the state of Florida, specifically with Miami, and they've also had PD within the state of Florida as well, which is a great given our current standards that we're ready to embark on. The other thing, which is also, and Daniela mentioned this, of them knowing our district, is they are also the ones that facilitated our literacy audit and review. So they have spoken and received surveys in the past, in that 18-19 year, to really listen to what we needed to do to inform the work moving forward of what our teachers needed. Thank you. One of the things that we heard very, very loud and clear from you, and we still hear, is the use and need for authentic text. You spend a lot of time as teachers planning and researching and sharing and looking for that text that's really going to meet the needs of your students. And we would have the capacity now in working with PCG to not only hear the type of text and get that input that Daniela mentioned earlier from you of what's really working in your classrooms, but also the bank of text that PCG has used within Florida and also other districts throughout the nation, given, again, your constant feedback and constant input into what that could be and what works well for your students. One of the pieces that's been mentioned, especially with best standards, and then of course, what really came out in the audit was that need for foundational skills and instruction every day, which is why we have SIPs and some of the things that have been purchased for that. What's really good about the customization piece within the instructional part is that these foundational skills aren't separate from the curriculum that's being written. They'll be embedded within it. So one of the things in the audit was a disconnect that sometimes we see that could happen between reading and writing and foundational skills. The skills would also be embedded into that unit of study, which also makes for a seamless transition, again, with input from teachers on what that would look like. In addition to that, within that custom curriculum, there will be complete PowerPoints with notes for every single lesson that's created. So this is a great resource that can be integrated within Canvas and those pieces to be able to provide you with exactly what you need for every lesson. In addition, give you the resources that you need that's customized by you in the planning process with your students. One of the biggest input that you had let us know during that literacy audit and that we have seen is the need for mini lessons, like Daniela and Tracy had mentioned earlier, and needs for scaffolding specifically for our ELL students, our ESE students, and enrichment for those that need enrichment. These lessons would be created and embedded with your input within each of the modules and units within those lessons to provide you with extra scaffolding for all of our kids. And so now I know that Terry had mentioned at the beginning of our time together that we want your feedback, and we would also love your questions right now within the chat to get kind of your thoughts. I know you probably have a lot of questions given this initial meeting and PowerPoint with what we are wanting to get your input on moving forward with such an important topic as obviously our curriculum adoption. So if you could go ahead and write your questions in the chat like you have been.
Okay, and as people are doing that, I'll go ahead and start looking at a few of these questions and see if we can help with that. Been a couple of questions about the term customization versus creating our own. It is essentially that we are creating our curriculum with a committee of our teachers along with the experts that work with our partner PCG, if that were the case that we were to go that direction. So we would make sure that we have the literacy experts, the ones that have the background in curriculum writing to help develop that foundation, along with the input of our teachers to help really customize what it is that we want. Question here about using iReady. We would continue to use iReady in our small group instruction as far as our blended learning stations, and also for diagnostic progress monitoring. So we would continue to use that. Another question here around EL. We know we have around 13 schools that are using the EL curriculum, and no definitive stance has been made regarding the continuation of EL. We will work with Shay McCrae, Rachel O'Day, and Star Connor to talk about what that looks like going into next year for our EL schools. And if we feel overwhelmingly that we are on the right path to that, then we will obviously take that into consideration with the EL schools.
There's a question in here about where will the books come from. So that would be really up to the team that would, and I'm assuming this is about the customization, that would be up to the team that is on that, working on the customization, and those teachers would determine which books they wanted. And yes, all students, there would be enough materials. It would just be like purchasing from a publisher. Everyone would receive a hard copy of materials.
Yeah, I want to just re-emphasize that, Daniela, because that is important. I knew before we even entertained this thought that we know the importance of having books in students' hands, and being able to read print off a page is very important to us. And so definitely would need to be a part of this option for us. Question about supplemental material like LLI. You know, LLI is a tier 3 intervention, and that is something when we're talking about the core right now as far as what we're offering in tier 1 instruction. And so we would have that built and customized to our needs, along with some tier 2 interventions in place at the in small group instruction. They would also help develop that. When we talk about things like LLI, we could obviously continue to use programs like that for tier 3 interventions. LLI has a strong rating and is effective, and so we would still continue to use programs like that for tier 3 interventions.
There's a question about selecting a team of teachers to become a part of this project. We are working with both Rob and Stephanie, and we will continue to work with them on creating that team. And the question is customization, the decision. Nope, this is in your hands. We are reaching out to all of you, sharing this today, sending out this recorded video afterwards with a survey. And Rob and Stephanie are going to go over some of the next steps at the end of the meeting today. Kelly Smith, are we able to choose which one works best for primary and intermediate? Absolutely. So it is definitely not always a one size fits all. So that is something you can do with customization.
One of the questions says how much teacher autonomy is associated with customization versus other programs. So anytime that you have customization, keep in mind that your input is truly involved in terms of the texts that are used and how it looks, in terms of, deciding what you do in your classroom. That's something that teachers, always have that autonomy to do in terms of best meeting the needs of their individual students. Not every class is the same, but in terms of off the shelf, when you look at customization, you're looking at much more autonomy. You're talking about a curriculum that hasn't necessarily been created, that has a foundation perhaps, but the texts, the intervention, the way it looks comes from the teachers. That's that idea of with the teacher, for the teachers.
Does every child get their own book for these programs? Real books with real stories. That would be a part of the process. Yes, like for example, the slide that Debbie showed with different culturally responsive reflective text, authentic text, yes.
So one of the questions is, when you say that some of the materials that we would receive are partially aligned and or loosely aligned with our standards, what would implementation look like? especially when you think about the integration of social studies into the content, it would look like we were making some adjustments to ensure that the standards were met. So there would have to be some adjustments in the published curriculum to meet the content standards called for by social studies in particular. And anytime you wanted to include science or any of those content areas, we would have to make the adjustments because they're not 100% aligned in all cases.
Question, are these the only 3 choices? We are considering other ideas. So even though Tracy reviewed 3 of the 6 on the short bid list, there are 6 on that short bid list.
And I will say quality does matter. So one of the things we do look at when we look at all of those short bid lists is we go to some of the independent reviews like Ed Reports to make sure that it does have that content knowledge building aspect, that the quality of text has been rated very highly, and that there is alignment to the standards. So all of those things are considered when we start to narrow down those choices. So while there may be many options on the list, some of those options may right off the cuff be not where we want to head in that directions because they don't meet those ratings.
There was a question too about the culturally reflective and responsive materials. We do actually have a culturally responsive curriculum rubric that was developed alongside many other counties in this area of Florida. And so in it, it does include pieces that we could use to help rate our curriculum, whether it be one that was customized or one that was not, in looking at what population is that, what populations does it represent? Girls, boys, Hispanic, African American, other cultures, and kind of looking at who the characters are, who the authors are of those texts to make sure that they truly do represent the student population as well as the adult population of Hillsborough County. Hope I answered that.
Leah asked what guiding principles will be leading the customization project. That's a great question because it will really depend upon the group. One of the first things out of the gate, if we were to go this direction, would be to bring the teachers who would help customize some of the units in the project. We would really sit down and talk about what is our guiding principles. So the teachers would have a voice in developing that, whether that is we want to make sure that we have a content-rich curriculum that builds knowledge over time for students so that they learn deeply about, that could be one of our guiding principles. Or we really want to focus deeply on close reading. And so when we build in those really close reading strategies within the curriculum, we're teaching kids a progression from K to 12, how to engage in those texts very deeply. So that all will be done at I would call a pre-meeting before we engaged in that work. Those guiding principles will be established with the voice of our teachers. How do you choose teachers for the team? I think Rob and Stephanie will help us with that process as we go through creating, if we were to go this direction, creating those teams. And it could be a sort of an application process. Obviously, a lot of people, I'm sure there would be a lot of competitiveness to be on the team. And of course, we wouldn't be able to accommodate every single person, but we would probably have an application process so that we can narrow the team down.
So Dulcie said she was unclear on curriculum writing for a large school district, experience-wise, et cetera. So what is the responsibility in terms of the district employees? So the district employees, in terms of Hillsborough County employees, would be the ones providing the input. They're not actually the ones doing the writing of the content per se. PCG has actual certified curriculum writers. That's what they do. Instead, what they do is they seek out input first in terms of the key texts that you want to use, as well as text sets that go with it, a heavy review of the standards. Off they go and they draft, and then they come back. And that's where the rubric is used in terms of what we, in terms of what's key and important, and in terms of what changes and adjustments need to be made before it ever goes out to schools and is put in front of students. There's a similar review concept going on right now in the, I want to say it's in the middle school and the high school, who does use some content associated with PCG at the moment. And so that is the process that we use. My supervisors and teachers provide them with input, they make the adjustment, we come back, we meet, see if there needs to be more adjustments made. So it's kind of that give or take, but in terms of content writing, PCG is the actual curriculum writers that they have on staff.
I don't know if this question has been posed, but I'll just go ahead and share that the cost of such project would be very similar to that of a traditional adoption. I think one of the benefits would be that the professional development would be tailored to the specific needs of our schools, and obviously the teacher having so much part in the development of the curriculum. But as far as cost for something like this, it would be very comparable, as in almost dollar for dollar, what you would get out of just maybe adopting a textbook that had digital access. And then of course, none of the teacher facilitation guides or professional development. We know a lot of times that professional development with a publisher is kind of that first of the year during in-service day, and you get your 1 hour of how to log into the program and how to find the resources, and that's it. That's a lot different with something like this, where we could potentially go very deep with training everyone on the science of reading and how to use those practices and that knowledge really with any curriculum, and just teaching kids how to read, I think is a really exciting opportunity. But needless to say, we get, I think, a lot more for bang for our buck versus getting a publisher off the shelf.
And there was a question up earlier, although I can't find it now, about how long would we use whatever curriculum we adopt, and it would be until the next adoption, just as we've followed that up until now.
So that would be 5 years.
Sorry, 5 years, yes. And another question on the teachers on this team, this need to be CTA members only? No, this could be anyone. And yes, I think that's a great idea, is to create a survey to poll. We have not begun to select that committee or work with anything until we know what direction you all want to head in.
The question was, does PCG have experience in early literacy curriculum? Knowing that, a lot of the big companies like HMH and McGraw-Hill do. The answer to that is yes, they have designed curriculum for elementary early literacy programs, K2, in various districts across the country. So the answer to that is yes. They also have a pretty extensive professional development piece that they offer aligned to the science of reading.
There was a question also that talked about the e-learning component of making sure that we're looking at curriculum, whether through customization or through the textbook adoption, that if it would be compatible with e-learning. And the answer to that would be they would have to be. And that could also, again, when you look at customization, everything would be built in Canvas. And with some of the other, if we want a textbook, we would have to make sure that they have an LTI that's compatible with Canvas, and that would be part of the process through reviewing either customization or the other way. That's a good question.
All right, anything else, guys?
Here's a question about whether PCG is both an auditing company and a curriculum creation company.
Yeah, and Debbie, you can speak to, so Debbie in 2019 was leading the initiative around the audit when we did that here. PCG is, they created college paths, college and career curriculum. They're a big organization and do many, many things. A part of that being their educational branch. And in that educational branch, they do develop curriculum. And within that branch, they also can do reviews of existing curriculums in districts like they did in 2019 with Hillsborough. Debbie, if you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, that is correct. Initially, when the board approved the review and the audit, it was to see, because we had heard so many different things from the field of it was meeting the needs, it wasn't meeting needs, the curriculum was getting old, and we had to keep revising it, and our supervisors were spending a lot of time doing that, but it still wasn't meeting it. Plus, we wanted to align what is the written curriculum versus what's happening in the classroom, and how is it meeting the needs of teachers, and if it is and if it isn't. And so that's why we went as a literacy team at that time through an audit process, through a third party that could really look at all of the components, what was happening in the classroom, what was written, also through surveys, all the teachers that filled in the surveys of what it looked like K-5, one, to make improvements on that based on what we were hearing, and then two, also inform and guide our process. So PCG has done audits in other districts as well in Florida. And then through speaking with them, they had, like Terry said, didn't know they had an entire branch that then could write, because they saw the needs of some of the gaps and things that were happening. So have that branch as well as many others within that educational component.
There's a question here about, since we still have iReady as a program, will LAFS materials be available to use in conjunction? So that, again, what would be entirely up to the group that's working, that would be working with customization, if that's the route we go, if those LAFS materials are to be incorporated into the core, or if that's something that would be used as a tier 3.
And just for the good of the group, you know, LAFS was brought in this year to really kind of shore up some of the deficiencies that were found in the audit for this year and next year for 3 through 5 until we get to the adoption. So we know and understand that LAFS is not that core comprehensive curriculum that we desire to have once we get through the adoption. It's really that bridge, or that Band-Aid, as you will, to get us to that point. So that right now we ensure that we have that standards aligned text quality and text dependent questions that students need so much in order to be successful, especially on those state assessments. So to just go a little further with what Daniela said, is that, you know, if we were to go with PCG and go with a customized curriculum, would there be an opportunity to incorporate LAFS in maybe small group instruction? That is definitely a possibility if that's what the group decided to do.
And there was a question about, will the text selected align with the sample text that the Florida DOE provided as sample text by standard? So with the best standards comes recommended text and various texts that the state gave as samples. And yes, we would have one of the, no matter what the decision was, one of the requirements, I believe it's a third of your books that the students read do have to come off that list. So the answer to that question is yes, that's not really a choice that the state gives us. It's a requirement of the adoption. There's also a question about, is there a conflict of interest if PSCG was their auditor and now will customize our curriculum? I think it depends on your perspective, I guess. You know, as Ms. Simic presented, it's also about a partnership. Sometimes an auditor or anything like that learns more about the organization and, you know, what worked, what didn't, heard from teachers, principals, reading coaches, ESOL teachers, district level administrative and staff. And sometimes that knowledge can be helpful as you move forward ahead. I mean, I understand the point too, of course, you know, there's always, you know, the other side to that, but sometimes you think about it, you know, when you already know someone, it's easy to develop the relationship necessary to build a sustaining curriculum that can truly meet the needs of students.
That's a good question there about, and I'm sorry, Leticia, I hope I pronounced that right. The customization option is only with PCG. So if we did choose to go with one of the other publishers, customization is not included in those. And about leaning towards customization. So really no other motive besides the fact that this is something that would be a really great opportunity. It would be the right way for our kids to learn how to read, in my personal opinion, but that doesn't mean that that's the way that we have to go. We know that a lot of times publishers can, the curriculum isn't geared specifically towards our students, and this would give us the chance to create curriculum that is geared towards our students with our teachers' voices being heard. So that you may be hearing, picking up on that we're leaning towards that, and I think it's more a level of excitement that this could really be something exciting and new that we've never done before, and that could show really good gains when it comes to reading. But there is no other motive, or would be any other motive than that.
The timeline, when you take a look at the timeline for implementation, I think we answered that, but it was at the beginning of the presentation, but for K2, they do move to the new standards starting next school year. So their timeline would obviously be in terms of training and professional development on the front end, looking at in terms of the curriculum being ready this summer. And moving forward with that, even including some professional development opportunities on the science of reading and understanding those connections. And then you guys would be ready to go by the time August hit. 3 through 5, you guys are a year behind because of the FSA and other things. So your training and professional development and content writing, should we go this route, would end up being closer to the start of the second semester, late into the first semester, into second semester, to be again ready for the following school year. So it's 2 separate implementation timelines because of the implementation of the standards.
As far as saving money through the customization, Terry, Mr. Connor did share that it's about equal when it comes to that. We wouldn't necessarily, well, if we went this route of customization, we wouldn't be paying teachers to develop the customization. Teachers' voices would be heard and teachers would be a part of the process, but they wouldn't have to do what many of you could potentially be doing right now. It would be a lot more guidance on the end of PCG.
Question about, could it be implemented with e-learning, the customized curriculum? Absolutely. That one of the aspects that it being integrated into Canvas will make it much easier for implementing with e-learning students.
And will teachers receive training on the best standards? The answer to that is yes. The other question is, hold on, wait, I lost the question. Sorry. I think the question was about whether or not we can write our own curriculum as a district. Anything, I guess, is possible. However, writing a curriculum, while it sounds like a great task, it takes a lot. It's not as easy as it sounds. There's a lot of inner workings that you have to know about just to write your own curriculum. It's different than writing one grade level unit, as opposed to writing a curriculum for 3 grade levels or for 6 grade levels, and making sure that you encompass test specs, making sure that you encompass requirements of text, making sure that you have appropriate scaffolds for all learners. There's a lot that goes into that. And in terms of training and professional development, I'm sure there are many people out there that are able to do it, but there are also a lot of people out there that would require a lot of training and a lot of professional development around there. Not everybody is a curriculum writer. It's very different than implementing the curriculum in your own classroom, thinking about it from the backside and all that goes in. So in terms of that, do we want to write our own curriculum all by ourselves as we move into new standards? Probably not the best suggestion to have without any support from anybody else. Hope I answered that. And right now, the customization we're looking at is specifically for K-5. We haven't even ventured to middle school and high school just yet.
Stephanie, that is correct. Stephanie asked the question, how often would we meet? I think it will come as units are developed. So that process will come in probably 6 to 8 week cycles as they go and they get our input, they develop the curriculum, they bring it back for a 3-week review process. So the teachers will actually get their hands on those units to edit and revise and send that information back to the project managers for finalization, so to go to print. So it's a cycle that will happen for every unit at every grade level, K-5, or right now we're just talking K-2. So that's kind of the process. And then I think the other part of that question, I lost it, moved on me. Oh, if we don't go with PCG, will we still have a group to work with to reflect on what is selected? Yes, we would. We would have a committee of teachers to go through the selection process. Erica, we won't be printing the copies of the best standards right now, but I'll send you the link to the PDF of that version so you can get familiar with those best standards. But they will be incorporated as we move forward into developing curriculum. Did someone say that Hillsborough has worked with or has connections with PCGA? The work that we've done previously with PCG is we work with a mini adoption around PABS, college and career readiness. So we've developed, or we work with them to adopt curriculum for our intensive reading classes. And then we've also conducted our literacy review at K-5 back in 2019.
There was a question from Caitlin. It was way up at the top. Which programs come with like the leveled readers, I think, that match with each whole group unit, like Journeys used previously? Based on what I have reviewed, the Basils do. When you look at the Wonders, I'm not sure if they're individual little books or if they're actual printouts like read work type articles, but they do align their interventions to the whole group unit. The others don't have any of those materials available. So it would be most likely your HMH, your Savas or Pearson, as well as the Wonders program.
Terry, I just wanted to let you know, this is Stephanie, in the chat, for someone who was asking for the best standards, I did give them the link to the standards for English language arts that are on the DOE website. So
Thank
if
you.
anybody is interested in the best standards, they are available on Florida DOE's website in PDF versions, and you can print or save them as you wish for math or language arts.
And I did type an answer that I'll go and share with everybody. We are planning our professional development rollout in the second semester on the best standards. So more information to come, exciting news about that particular venture as we learn more about the best standards and how to implement them next year at K2. Okay, I know we're running on time and we still have more questions popping up, so just keep the questions coming and we'll start to look at the ones we haven't been able to get to and answer them. And then Rob, you wanna, is it up Rob next?
I believe so. If you want to bring up my next slide. Hey, I'm just going to talk just briefly about next steps. I am Rob Creed here. I'm the proud president at CTA, and I'd like to thank everybody here on this webinar. Really, this is born out of the idea of trying to get feedback and then a vote on what we need to do. We want more teachers to understand the direction and have a say in what's happening and how we're going to go about it. So this is the first step. Knowing that the best standards are coming out, we want to get in front of it. So as Mr. Connor and the team has said, that we're going to be looking at K2 first, but we want to talk to K5 teachers, especially those of you that are teaching ELA, to get your feedback on these ideas. So ultimately, we have a survey that you can see that you can click on here to kind of give us some feedback. We're asking for feedback this week as we can get our textbook adoption committee together on Thursday. They will use the feedback that you give them to come up with a recommendation for the superintendent, whether or not we looked at the pre-packaged textbook company creations for the curriculum, or if we want to go to a more customized plan here in Hillsborough County. The textbook adoption committee is not necessarily the committee that will be working on the customized creation of that curriculum. As Mr. Connor and Daniela was saying, we would have an application process. We will go through that and make sure that we have a wide variety of teachers across the district geographically, and that we have a lot of cooks in the kitchen creating that, reporting back and working with us as we kind of collaborate on that process. So this week, we're asking for your feedback on what you've heard today and what the options are. The textbook adoption committee will then look at that feedback and make a decision and bring a recommendation to the superintendent. And then from there, we would be either working with the textbook companies, or we would go forward with a customization sometime in 2021, starting with the K2 group. So once again, thank you everyone for being here today and kind of getting a brief synopsis of what's on the table. And we get handcuffed by the state in terms of what we can choose from textbook adoption in terms of companies. And then we have something else here on the table. I would like everyone out there to be safe, have a great winter break, and thank you for everything that you're doing for your students and your schools. With that, I think I'm going to pass the mic back over to Mr. Connor, who's going to, I don't know if you're going to answer some more questions, but this webinar will be available and is being recorded for others that could be in your grade level or other fellow teachers that didn't get opportunity to sit in this afternoon. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and as far as the link, you actually can't click on it on the screen, but you'll get the recording following this presentation, and you will also get the link to the survey, and that should come in an email directly from the superintendent before the end of the day.
Okay, that's all we have right now. We'll stay on and let the chat stay open for a little bit, and then we'll just capture those questions and then follow up. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.